What did Jesus eat at the Last Supper? A historical and spiritual exploration. Welcome to A Bite of History. Today, we're uncovering the foods eaten during one of the most famous meals in history, the Last Supper. This final meal Jesus shared with his disciples carries profound spiritual significance, but it was also rooted in the Jewish customs of the time. By exploring what was on the table, we gain a deeper understanding of the historical context, cultural practices, and the lasting impact of this sacred event on Christian rituals. The Last Supper took place during the Jewish festival of Passover, a celebration of the Israelites' liberation from slavery in Egypt. Jesus and his disciples would have observed traditional Passover customs, likely sitting down for a Seder meal. Jerusalem was filled with pilgrims for the festival, making the atmosphere one of anticipation and reverence. In addition to religious customs, Jewish dietary laws, or kashrut, governed what could be eaten. Understanding these laws helps us piece together what foods were likely present at the Last Supper. The meal likely featured several staple foods of Jewish Passover, including unleavened bread matzah. A key element of the Passover meal, matzah symbolizes the haste with which the Israelites fled Egypt, having no time to let their bread rise. During the Last Supper, Jesus broke the bread and shared it with his disciples, saying, "This is my body," turning it into a powerful symbol of sacrifice and communion. Wine. 4 cups of wine are traditionally consumed during the Passover Seder, representing joy and the covenant between God and his people. Jesus used wine to signify "my blood of the covenant," adding a new spiritual dimension that became central to Christian theology. Bitter herbs. Part of the Seder meal, these herbs, possibly lettuce, endive, or horseradish, symbolized the bitterness of slavery in Egypt. They were likely dipped in a sauce, such as charosé, a sweet, paste-like mixture of fruits and nuts representing the mortar used by the Israelites as slaves. Roasted lamb was traditionally eaten during Passover, symbolizing the Passover sacrifice made in the Temple of Jerusalem. The lamb represented the Paschal lamb, whose blood was used to mark the doorposts of the Israelites, protecting them from the final plague in Egypt. This meat was likely present at the Last Supper, reinforcing the theme of sacrifice. Fish. As a common part of the ancient Mediterranean diet, fish might have been present, particularly given its symbolic associations in early Christianity. Olives and olive oil were a staple of the Mediterranean diet, often served with bread or as a simple appetizer. Olive oil might have been used for dipping or cooking. Dates and figs. Fruits like dates and figs were commonly consumed and may have been part of the meal, symbolizing sweetness and the bounty of the land. The foods at the Last Supper were rich in symbolism, connecting Jewish traditions with the emerging Christian faith. The unleavened bread, transformed by Jesus' words into a symbol of his body, emphasized themes of sacrifice and redemption. Wine, which was central to the Passover celebration, became a symbol of Jesus' blood and the establishment of a new covenant with humanity. The roasted lamb held profound meaning as well, symbolizing both the historical Passover sacrifice and foreshadowing Jesus' impending crucifixion as the Lamb of God. Bitter herbs reflected the struggles and sufferings of both the Israelites and Jesus' own trials to come. Beyond the foods, the Last Supper was a gathering of profound fellowship. Jesus and his disciples shared this meal at a time of looming betrayal and suffering, yet the act of breaking bread together fostered unity and strength. In Jewish culture, sharing a meal was a deeply rooted tradition, symbolizing connection and belonging. The Last Supper emphasized the importance of relationships and communal bonds, which resonated with Christian practices that followed. This sense of community continues to influence Christian traditions today, particularly through communion, where believers come together to share in the bread and wine, just as Jesus and his disciples did. The Last Supper was more than just a final meal. It was a significant event steeped in Jewish tradition and enriched by the symbolism of the foods consumed. Unleavened bread, wine, bitter herbs, and lamb were not just sustenance, but powerful symbols of faith, sacrifice, and redemption. These elements not only reflect Jewish customs but also laid the foundation for Christian rituals that continue to this day. By understanding what Jesus and his disciples likely ate, we gain deeper insight into the spiritual messages embedded in the meal and its lasting impact on Christian beliefs and practices. Basima, for joining us. Please comment with any suggestions.